Meeting will come to order. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the September meeting of the Farmville Board of Commissioners. We appreciate you taking this opportunity to be part of this local government process. Tonight, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioner David Shackelford is going to lead us in our invocation, after which I'll ask you to join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance. May all rise, please.
All wise and eternal God, our Father, the giver of every good and perfect gift, creator of all mankind. Lord, we come before you tonight as humble as we know how. Thank you for help us to be God, to be obedient to your word, that we would do the things that you have called us to do. And Lord, if you do these things for us, we'll be careful to give thy name and praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Again, it's my privilege to welcome you to this meeting this evening, and I trust that as you came in the door that you avail yourself of the opportunity to pick up an agenda. But if you didn't, you probably ought to get one. That way you can follow along and what proceedings will be here this evening. We do, if you're looking at that, you'll see that we are now down to citizen presentation. And that's where we ask you as citizens of the town of Farmville to address this board about anything that you'd like to during this meeting. We do ask you to sign up before 20 minutes after and to tell us what you're going to want to talk to us about. We have three tonight that wants to speak to us, and I'll call them in the order in which they are listed. First one is Bobby Jonah from Walnut Street in Farmville.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm president of the H.B. Suggs Charitable Organization, and I want to, my members, will you stand up, please, with me on this? I just want to thank you, the town of Farmville, the commissioners, Dr. Hobbs, Jamin, David, Brenda, Jack, and John Moore. We had our unveiling of the H.B. Suggs Park this weekend, where we have our alumni come back, and it was just a hit. It was absolutely just a hit. So I just want to thank you guys' participation in helping us do that. And just want you guys, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for jump-starting what we have, which is going to add beauty to that side of Farmville. Okay? Thank you. Just wanted you guys to know it.
Thank you. That's very good. All right, thank you, Bobby. John Spruill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Administrative. I rise to talk on the issue of picking up debris, yard waste, on the south side. I called, and I can't remember the guy's name. He said, have you paid to pick it up? I said, it's on a vacant lot. I said, stuff from the tree that blew down in somebody's lot, and they had the tree cut and they moved it to the street. I said, it's been sitting out this week make 3 weeks. And when I called last week, the guy said you had to pay. But I had a tree cut down in my yard, and I put it side the street. It was gone the next day. But this been there lingering and lingering. So I wanted to know why the guy told me you had to pay. And when I talked to the fella at the Public Works, he told me that we'll come around and check, but he didn't never call me back.
All right. Thank you, John. We'll check
Yes.
into it, let
Okay.
you know. You'll be hearing from someone. All right. Stephen Hardebar.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. A little over 2 years ago, this town sought to invest $2,000 in some extra safety signs and a welcoming banner to welcome the almost 2,000 cyclists that were riding across the state. Because of the warm welcome, the support from the town, the cyclists are returning. This year, once again, first time ever, a small town's been selected this close. We'll be hosting those same cyclists again, this time downtown the Di Visconti Center. About 2,000 cyclists on October 3rd, Thursday, will be riding in from about 11 to 3 on the way from Clayton. And because of our warm reception, Greenville was selected for the first time ever in the 20-year history to be an overnight host. That means those cyclists will be camping out in Pitt County, the town commons, and riding out the next day. All because of Farmville's warm hospitality a couple years ago, and they want to come back. I wanted to rise tonight to make sure I could answer any questions, make sure you're all aware of this, but also to really thank the police department, Public Works, the library, Parks and Rec, the main museum, along with businesses and artists in downtown. We've already been planning and getting things ready. We are the most prepared town already on this whole week-long cycling adventure, and the department heads and their staff have been incredible to discuss things with, plan things for the safety and efficiency, and to warm embrace these cyclists coming in. So the cyclists will be coming in, again, down Church Street, onto North Main Street, having a quick rest stop, and riding around town out Stansburg to Greenville. Some cyclists, if they choose to ride an extra few miles, they'll go out through Fountain, Falkland, and come back South Main Street, highlighting our entire town and its diversity. We're already working with television and radio to make sure people are aware of the route and to really welcome these people to our area and promote our town. If things work out, because that happens to be a Thursday night home game for ECU, ESPN will be in the area. We're hoping to actually get some live footage on ESPN of Farmville's welcoming of those cyclists. So again, thank you everyone, thank you for your staff, thank you for your support in the past.
Thank you. All right. That concludes our citizen presentation. We'll move on now to item E, and that's town manager's comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, just have a couple of quick things. Some of you may have heard that there may be a storm approaching, and so we're in, our full storm mode. The mayor happened to be in town hall this morning when we had our first meeting with the emergency staff, and we're just talking about these guys are all professionals, and so they know what to do. So we were just going through some things that we do to prepare and make sure that everybody's on the same page and identify problems before they become real problems. And so I just wanted to report that we are, already preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. So we'll continue to have these meetings. We've got another one tomorrow morning scheduled. We'll meet as we need to leading up to the storm, but hopefully it'll be a non-event. But I did want to let you know and let everyone know that we're at the ready, and we're going to address or be ready and address the needs of the community and all. Also, we will be giving you updates regularly and also posting things on Facebook and our website as to, if the storm is coming or when it hits, how's that going to affect our citizens and what you need to know to respond to citizens. So I just wanted to mention that. The other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned it at the last meeting, but I'll mention it again because we had a meeting earlier this afternoon. The Economic Development Committee I've been participating with, the Greenville ENC Alliance is what the official name is now, encompasses all the communities in Pitt County as well as private industry, and the board is roughly half and half government and those from private industry, and of course trying to work on a framework to attract new business and industry to the county. And Commissioner Hobbs had expressed an interest in becoming more involved in some of the economic development efforts, so I asked her to attend the meeting with me, and I'm going to get her to add her sort of to that ad hoc or ex officio role. But hopefully she got a good view of sort of a taste of what's going on, and will continue to do so. I mentioned before, but I'll mention again, I think it's probably time that the town of Farmville consider a formal role in this organization, which means a monetary contribution, which is by the bylaws is set at $1 per capita. So in our case, it'd be $4,700 or whatever as an initial investment, and it would give us a voting membership. Right now, I'm an ex officio member. Commissioner Hobbs can become an ex officio member. So there'll be a couple representatives, but if we make a contribution, then we would actually have a voting role at the table. And not that we're diminished at right now, but we don't have a vote. And other towns are participating. Of course, Greenville, Pitt EDC is there, Bethel was there, Aden, Grifton has been there some, Simpson has been there, Winterville has been there sporadically, and so it just depends on the meeting times and all that. But I just wanted to just mention that to you, and I've talked with the chairman of that group today, and he is willing to come and just speak to the board and answer any questions. So there would be plenty of information in your hands before anything's proposed, but I just want to mention it to you because this organization is moving forward, and I hate for Farmville to be left behind. So this sort of brings to bear a lot of resources through this organization that as a small town we can't do on our own. We would harness the power of the whole county to help us. So I just wanted to mention that. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question. May I ask that now?
Yeah.
David, in thinking about our last storm that we had, that was our mini tornado, high winds, whatever, I know because I was downtown the entire time, we had a hard time with communications because the cell towers went down. I mean, mine was down. That's why I knew something major had happened.
Right.
How do we keep up with, so that Wes can talk to Donnie and Donnie can talk to Paul? And I mean, is there a way to do that without cell phone coverage?
Well, we talked about that today, and actually it was identified as our major problem is communication in our meeting today. And we have some radios, and we are securing additional radios, getting some that we haven't used back to make sure that we have enough to go around to the folks like Public Works and police and fire and all that, those folks. So we will, if everything goes well, we'll have a lot better. We'll be better prepared on the communication front, and we will not be depending on cell phones as our only means of communication.
Okay.
We're working on it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you following up on that, because I know that was a problem that night because people were having to drive across to different areas to tell what needed to be told, because there was no cell phone coverage. I mean, we all think we have our cell phones and we can call all the time, but it was down.
We talked about grouping certain employees together too, so that we wouldn't have Public Works over here and police over here and fire over here. It would be more of a meshed group, that could work as various work groups, so that wouldn't have to be like, okay, what's Public Works doing now, or what's utilities doing, that kind of thing. So we're all, in addition to the actual radio communications, we're also working on how we allocate our personnel too.
Okay, and I have one more question. I know that Pitt County has issued a state of emergency this afternoon. I mean, it's just so that they can get things going. At what point do we declare a state of emergency? I mean, do we wait until we know what path it's taken or something happens? I mean, how do we know when to do that? Does that make sense?
Well, I guess when it becomes necessary, but I mean, that doesn't really answer your question, but and some of the other folks police especially may want to do this or chime in, but when it becomes necessary to keep people off the roads or tap into equipment or resources through the state or county level, that would be logical time to.
Okay.
And also, when we find out really what this thing's going to do, because it's still early.
Okay.
And just today, I've seen various scenarios that are different. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that particular. It's not, I guess, they're doing it because they're going to open up their emergency operations center.
Okay,
That's their big thing.
And
And
the-
also, they're on the front
Shelters.
line with the state. And they're
Okay.
also opening their shelters. And that's one thing I forgot to mention, but you mentioned that. There is an emergency shelter being opened tomorrow at Farmville Middle. Is it 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Or tomorrow evening. And that's one of, I think, 6 shelters in the county, but that's the only local one. And of course, we'll be putting that information out too. And Pitt County's pretty good about getting the word out from an emergency management standpoint.
okay, thank you.
Mayor, I have several, if you don't mind. I just want to follow up earlier this morning. I was on the phone with my friend John Spruill. When we start getting these messages, he and I start jumping through some hoops for friends, and as my friend Bobby says, on the south side, we start getting prepared, start looking at a lot of places. This morning, we asked about the drainage on George Street. Has that been taken care of, or is that something we can?
We talked about it this morning, some of those areas including.
Okay, so that will be addressed.
Waverly, George, into
If-
Pitt, Davis, I think that was the other, along the railroad, that seems.
Did you have along the railroad on Waverly Street there? Would you mind, as soon as that's good to go, let me know so that I can let John know? He helps me get the word out, and for the past 12 years, we've done a good job of getting the word out, and the folks certainly appreciate it. And one more thing I want to share with you in a meeting today concerning this. One of the things that we need to be aware of is the dry weather that we've had, and the ditches have grown up and they're full of vegetation, and that may cause some flooding throughout the area. And Jamin, on your side of town, you have a couple of streets over there that have the drainage ditches, and on Contentioush Street too, there's one that runs behind Miss Myrtle Suggs' house that needs to be checked into, and then Miss Sandra Joyner's house, there's one back there. With 4 to 6 inches of rain, we could have some issues, and I would certainly like to see those addressed if at all possible tomorrow. I'm sure it's on your blotter, but I just wanted those folks to know that we were taken care of, and as soon as you can let me know, I'll let John know we get the word out pretty quick.
We talked about all those problem areas this morning. I will say this, that sort of opens up your commission. There has been a lot of work done around the pond in that area, and I think Commissioner Dixon can attest to the fact that water is flowing a lot more quickly out of this stream, downstream and away from those homes than it used to. So we've done a lot of cleaning as part of the pond. Helps that way. And we've also addressed 2 storm drainage areas in the south side that had collapsed culverts and things since the last storm. The main one being the last.
Is that it? Following along here, you see the next item, financial report. What we're going to, financial report is provided with financial director Johnson. Do you have any questions? If not, we'll go on to changes, additions, and deletions to the report.
Mayor, I was expecting a special guest to be with us tonight, and they thought that they would be cutting it short to be here. They wanted to get into opening comments in Susan's presentation, but he gave me a press release that I would like, if he does not show up, that I'd like an opportunity to read to the town of Farmville and the board in the final discussion on it tonight, if he's not here. I think we can watch it.
All right. All right.
Mayor, Commissioners. The item that Mr. Hodgkins is referring to was agenda item number 4. That item was going to be dealing with the amendment to the portion of our ordinance that dealt with junk vehicles. The intent behind that chapter also was to, there were some issues with us being able to enforce the junk vehicle ordinance due to that $500 stipulation of the general statutes. We've worked our way through that portion of that, and we've been able to change some language, but I received some feedback on Friday from John Attorney Chris, and there was an issue regarding another section within that ordinance that, upon meeting with Paul this morning and having a discussion on that, we felt it was best at this time to pull that item just to give us a little bit of time to look at some other ordinances, make a correction, or not really a correction, but to beef up that portion of the ordinance, and then bring that back to you at next month's meeting. So that's why we feel like we should pull that from the agenda. First item before you tonight, this is a ordinance amending chapter 157, the zoning ordinance for the town of Farmville. And this looks at, not too long ago, the ordinance was amended to include regulations regarding commercial vehicles being parked in front and side yards. Since that time, the planning board has requested to look at and take up also looking at the parking of non-commercial vehicles in front yards of all residential lots, as well as in the side yards and of corner lots on all locations of the yard except for an improved driveway or parking pad. With the amendment to this ordinance, parking on those locations would be prohibited. If you go through the ordinance amendment, what we've included there, we've done some research for some other ordinances in other communities across the state, and that what we've compiled here are types or materials that would be suitable to park vehicles on. They would consist of concrete, asphalt, brick or stone, gravel or crush and run, or other materials that would be deemed by the code enforcement officer, or deemed necessary, or would be approved by the code enforcement officer, sorry. Parking in the drive areas will be limited to 40% of the front yard area for any zoning lot. And access to the front yard would still be limited to properly approved curb cuts. There would be some exceptions that we've included with this, and these are general exceptions from other communities as well, and these would include special events like family parties. These events would have a duration no more than a day in length. And the code enforcement officer would determine whether an event would count as a temporary event. So really this would be to satisfy if you have family that's in for holidays or birthday parties or things like that. This exception is pretty common in most communities across the state dealing with this. Additionally, the code enforcement officer could waive the material coverage requirements if he or she found that the parking areas are clearly defined or marked, maintaining a safe, sanitary, and neat condition, or not contributing to or increasing soil erosion, and the locations and design are traditionally and customarily associated with the subject dwelling. In the case of violations, this violation would carry a $50 per day penalty with possible towing of the vehicle after the third occurrence.
All right. Okay, you've heard the presentation by the planning director. We did advertise a public hearing, and we want to conduct that public hearing now. So I will declare it to be open at this time. If anyone wants to speak, would like to speak to this, please come forward and do so. Seeing as there is none, I'll declare the public hearing to be closed. And now, Board, I ask you, what's your pleasure on this particular item?
I
Got a
have
couple of questions.
some things I'd like to say.
Okay.
Okay, I voted against this original ordinance because 2 years ago, whenever we did it, because I feel like that we are going against the working man. There are so many people in this town that drive for a living, that own a $750,000 truck, and we're going to tell them, you work hard every day, but you can't come home and sleep in your house with your vehicle sitting there. And I still have a huge problem with that. I realize that could be an eyesore. There is nowhere for them to park. There is no public area that they have a locked fence that they can get into. But I have a real problem. It's hard for me to say, it's going to be hard for me to say to Mr. Joyner, you cannot drive your 18-wheeler home, but Donna, you can leave your 4 junk cars sitting in your yard for the next 10 years. And I just have a real problem, and I had the same problem 2 years ago when we voted on it. We're going to ordinance ourselves out of business because we are making it so that people that live in this town, that pay taxes, that drive for a living to support their families, we're saying you can't come home. And that's, I have a real problem with that.
I understand.
I had it 2 years ago. I still have it now.
Understand the concerns. Just to clarify what this ordinance amendment entails, as a part of the zoning ordinance, this would actually be section .075 within chapter 157. That's the one that deals with the front and side yard parking that would be related to the commercial vehicles, which I believe you're referring to. That's what we currently have in the ordinance.
Right.
And it sounds like that's where your concerns are for.
A lot of,
yeah.
I even have concerns about handymen that have a truck and a trailer, that's what they do for a living. They go and do construction work, that they can't bring their trailer with all their equipment home, and it's all tied into me. Whether I'm wrong, then you need to tell me I'm wrong. But to me, when we're putting so many ordinances, and I realize we have to have ordinances, I don't have a problem with that, but when we tell, I'm going to use the example on May Boulevard, which is where I think this all started. That man that brought his 18-wheeler home, that backed it up down his driveway, and there were, people were saying he shouldn't be doing that. Well, it's his home. That's where he lives. His truck was clean as a whistle. There were no smells, there was no oil leaking, there was nothing. But we said, you can't drive this home. But you can't park it at McDonald's, and you can't park it down on at the ball field because that's not your property. So where am I supposed to go? Where are the people with the trailers that don't have a backyard to back it in where you can't see it because it's not concrete? Can they take a little bit of gravel or a box of rocks and put it down and say, oh, well, I made myself a side driveway?
Yeah, there's potential there for them to, if there were to be something, but again, I think that one would come back again to that differentiation between being a commercial vehicle, because they're within the commercial vehicle portion, if we're referring to 18-wheelers, there was language that was put in at that time that would really, it would capture your larger 18-wheelers and larger commercial vehicles. So even if you were to go in and add in the gravel or concrete, crushed stone, whichever you would put in, it would still be captured within the ordinance under the
They still can't come.
Right. Yeah.
But if I have a trailer, a 20-foot trailer hooked to my pickup truck, I can't put that in there either. I just have a real hard time with this. Thank you.
How many 18-wheelers do we have doing this? 1? 2? 2 18-wheelers. 3?
I think we probably have, are there just 3 there? I know there's that one on Main Street with all that, that's like a circus right there, but I mean, I know somebody got a ticket. Yes, Donnie, do you have something you want to say?
All I was going to say is, we are asked about it all the time. Where could park rangers are coming over the weekend or so on and so forth. And so we tell them, good luck.
Right.
Because you can't park on the food line because they don't own that property, the town doesn't own that property, and it's like that everywhere else. And we're not trying to give the short answer, but that's a problem. You think of about Tanglewood Apartments, they park there quite a bit on the loading train. That's a place that they can park.
I had one call me about a $25 ticket they got. I told them I'd pay the ticket for them, you know, because they had parked overnight to sleep in their own house. And they were, you know, I just have a real problem with this whole, with the whole, when you tell a man or a woman, because there are women drivers and there are women construction people, that you can't have your property, own your property, and you're doing the best you can to make it as nice and neat as you can so that you don't interfere. My trailer's not interfering, my truck's not interfering, and I'm gonna get back in it in 2 days because I've got 2 days off. You know, but you're telling me I can't even do that? I'm gonna have to sleep in my truck to keep somebody from stealing it out on 264? I mean, I just, it's concerning to me. And I'll be quiet now, but, I mean, it's just concerning to me.
Understand?
Is there any reason that they can't use a public parking lot downtown here for the weekend? Because, you know, we got, everything's closed downtown. And we do have several parking lots in the area. I mean, you know, for somebody who's coming in for just the weekend, bringing their truck in. And like you say, again, this is the way they make their living.
I do know, Mr. David, that Mike Nanny parked his, behind his business after he was told he couldn't park it at his house, and it got broken into the first night.
Yeah.
Yes, sir? Sorry.
I got a bunch of cents on this, or 2 cents. I can tell you why they don't allow it rightly, because it tears up parking. And if you allow one person to park in a parking area by the library, so on and so forth, everybody's gonna park there, you know that parking lot's gonna be 20 places. If they park it rightly, the property owner calls us constantly, and they get them put out of their home.
All right,
Justin.
do you have a comment?
I have 2 questions, and I agree with Commissioner Elks' humanitarian plea for this to be different. And I understand the predicament that you guys are in, because our town sewer line running under somebody's driveway, that driveway is not designed to carry 10 million pounds. It's designed to carry a regular passenger vehicle, and if it causes damage to the driveway, it's going to cause damage to our sewer line, and our sewers can back up, and that's something y'all got to deal with. So I get it. I get both sides. Just so I'm more clear, the issue presented to us tonight is not, we're talking about my work trailer, or we're not talking about an 18-wheeler. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If I understand it correct.
Right.
Okay. And the planning board, did they vote on this?
They did, yes. This was brought before the planning board at their August meeting, and was approved at that time.
Any more questions? Any more discussion? All right, so we're ready for a motion then on this item. Anybody ready to make a motion?
Mayor, I mean, I respect the planning board's decision to vote the way they did and bring this up. I also respect Commissioner Elks' opinion, and I think she's probably, you know, doing her job to represent the people who this ordinance would affect. And I hate to kick a can, and I'm certainly willing to go along with the sentiments of the rest of the board, but I'd almost challenge Justin and the other guys to come up with a different alternative that might make everybody happier, or not affect so many people so drastically as it may appear that it will.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly, as a board, because it sounds like, because we had two different sections within this chapter of the ordinance, the one that's dealing on the one hand with 18-wheelers and commercial vehicles, and then the other tonight dealing with your, non-commercial vehicles. It sounds like, what we may need to look at is, maybe going back and looking at really at both sections to see if there's, some changes and modifications possibly that need to be made.
Why don't you make a motion and table it until they go, or send it back to the planning board and come back with, address these concerns.
We were just sort of talking among ourselves. One thing that may get lost in this, and I think Commissioner Dixon was sort of getting at this, there's already restrictions on things like 18-wheelers and large commercial vehicles. As Commissioner Elks mentioned, that was adopted a couple of years ago. Really, the main thing that this addresses, as I read it, is like someone parking a bunch of cars, like passenger cars in their front yard. Not so much the working guy that's got a truck, because he's already sort of, I guess it's, someone said, captured or whatever the term was used by this earlier ordinance. But if you, and I've seen this a lot, and there are a lot of cars being parked in front yards all over town. And we get a lot of complaints. I remember used to get a lot of complaints about that. People having what people would call used car lots in their front yards. And so this ordinance is really more in response to passenger vehicles, people not parking in their driveways, but they're actually parking, and where they could park on the street too. In many cases, they're parking in their front yards. So it's more of a,
It just needs to be refined.
it is a sewer line issue, as Commissioner, people are parking in areas that aren't made for parking, wait, but also they are not taking advantage of possible on-street parking, which is allowed all over town with just a, passenger vehicle.
Could you refine this a little, between now and next meeting?
Sure, we can do that.
Just refine it and bring it in a little tighter.
Sure, we can do that.
And I'm not sure that, because I get what you're saying, this doesn't, I understand that we're not talking about 18-wheelers per se. But also if we could, and just so the gallery knows, we have in front of us just a portion of the ordinance, and not that any of us want to sit here and read, the 12-page or 20-page version of the ordinance, whatever it is, but just to have a little more context around this would be, so I'm not saying I want to challenge, I'm not saying I want to send it back to the planning board, I'm not at that point.
Sure.
But maybe like Commissioner Moore said, just.
More comprehensive understanding of.
Exactly.
Sure.
Because I really appreciate the planning board and appreciate what they're looking at. I'm just trying to make it for our citizens.
Sure.
The meat of what you're saying, and just so I understand, because this is how I understand it right now, the meat of what you're saying is if you are going to bring a vehicle, if you're going to park a vehicle at your house, it needs to be parked on concrete, asphalt, brick, stone, gravel, crush and run, or other materials deemed appropriate by the code enforcement officer. Basically an area designated for parking.
Correct, yeah. Really the true intent behind this is to avoid situations where you have a vehicle that's parked, right in the middle of a front yard. Now, what we're generally looking at, understandably, a lot of people might have a vehicle that's parked next to the driveway, and that goes back to, there's a portion that we've included within the ordinance that, mentions that if the locations are, and design was traditionally and customarily associated with the subject dwelling. So it provides the code enforcer an opportunity then, in that case, to go in and realize, okay, this is not going against the intent of what we're trying to do here, that this car is parked in a location that makes sense. It's not, going to, run the risk of tearing up ruts in the yard and, have vegetative, runoff into the sewers, so.
Thank you, Justin.
All right. So we want to, am I generally mistaken here? You want the planning board to look back at it and give you a different reading on it, or what do you want?
Speaking for myself, I'm not asking for that. I'm just maybe asking for a little more information and more specifically what exactly would be changed from.
Sure.
Which sections are being changed?
Sure. Yeah, we'll be glad to lay that out. Again, really, there's not much of a change in this case. This is more of an addition to that. Is essentially what we're adding on. But what I can do is I can lay out that entire chapter, the section that deals with commercial, and then also this addition here that deals with your non-commercial vehicles, so that the board can see it more comprehensive fashion and really see where where the differences fall.
And if Justin feels like after making the change in basically the presentation, if you feel like it should go back to the planning board so that we have a better understanding, a better assurance that they have a good understanding, then I think that'd be appropriate. But I'm not saying it has to, I wouldn't say that has to happen.
Okay.
But it does give us an opportunity to tell them what problem we had with it.
Sure.
So if we don't do that, then we just let it float.
I think you can bring it back at either the October or November board meeting once you got it refined to the point that you're.
Sure.
Okay, so no action.
No, actually, this time.
All right. Agenda item 2. Another public hearing.
You guys are going to have too much of me tonight. So item number 2 on the agenda this evening, this is an amendment that look at adding liquid petroleum, or the non-bulk and bulk storage of liquefied petroleum. Currently, our ordinance allows for the bulk storage of petroleum. Currently, that's allowed only in the industrial district. However, when we're looking at our ordinance, we didn't have a definition there to truly define bulk storage. Our research really come about in this early summer. We had a couple of interested parties approach the town about placing the LP storage tanks on their property, mostly as accessory uses to an existing business. This would be for the refill of your typical LP tanks that you use. Most people come with the ones used for cooking on your grill. We didn't have anything though in the ordinance at the time that would allow those as an accessory use. And as I mentioned, we also did not have a definition for non-bulk storage. So we did some research into that, and we had proposed to include this into the zoning ordinance. So what we have before you within this amendment would be the definition of non-bulk storage of liquefied petroleum. This will be any tank less than 4,000 gallons or an aggregate of tanks that are less than 4,000 gallons of LP. And bulk storage will be anything exceeding that 4,000, whether it be one tank or an aggregate of tanks. From there, what we've proposed to include would be amending the 4 districts within the zoning ordinance to include this as both a accessory use and a primary use. Those zoning districts would be general business, highway business, the industrial district, and the light industrial district. For those districts, we would permit, or we would have recommended that they be a permitted use as an accessory use, but not as a primary use. We did have someone that was interested potentially in doing this as a primary use. We've talked about, I'm not sure that you would see too many situations where the tank would be the only real business on the property. Most 99% of the time this would be a use that would be an accessory to another use ongoing on the property. So what we have proposed is that in these districts that I'd mentioned, they would be a use by right, or would be a permitted use as an accessory. However, if the plan would be to have them as a primary use, those would have to go, that would be a special exception. They would have to go before the Board of Adjustment if it were to be the sole primary use of the property. Finally, for this amendment, we've also looked at the standards and requirements, and that would be the spacing and setbacks. All of these spacing and setback requirements would meet both the state and federal regulations through the Department of Agriculture. In this case, the tanks would be located no closer than 10 feet from the property line, and the filling point would be no less than 25 feet from a property line. And the tanks would not be located closer than 10 feet from any building on the property, and the filling point should not be located any closer than 25 feet from any building. and talking with some of the interested parties who've already reached out to some companies in Greenville that come in to install these tanks. These guys pretty much already know all the state and federal regulations on that, so there will be no issues, confusion with, setback requirements, because these are all standard across the state. But they would have to obviously submit, to the town. We would go out and verify the location of each of these tanks.
All right. You've heard the presentation by the planning director. This is a public hearing, and I want to open the public hearing now for any comments that you have on the change here of ordinance amending the liquefied petroleum. Anyone? Since we have no response, I'll declare the public hearing to be closed at this time. Board, once again, I'll take your comments, questions, until we have a motion, and then you can debate it.
Mayor, I have met with the interested parties on this, and I'm prepared to make a motion, at which time.
All right, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we allow the bulk storage, approve the bulk storage amending as stated in the agenda package.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Moore. I'm sure all of you understand that motion. Any discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The ayes have it, and I made that change. Okay. All right. Now to item number 3, which is another public hearing. This, I believe, finishes up on first. All right.
All right. Final one for you this evening. This is an ordinance that would amend Chapter 111 of the Town's Code of Ordinances, the Peddlers and Solicitors Ordinance. A little earlier this year, we were approached. Over the last couple of years, we've had Chick-fil-A that's come over, each week during the summer to sell their sandwiches. And around the same time, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, there's a lot of the food truck industry is really picking up across the state. There was a meeting that was held in Pitt County a little earlier this year that that some of the town staff attended, and what essentially the county has requested at this point. All food truck permitting, as far as the health permits, go through the county office, but they had requested that the municipalities throughout the county develop some sort of permitting process for food trucks. So that's what we set out to begin to develop earlier this year. And what we decided to do currently in our ordinance, Chapter 111, deals simply with the with peddlers and solicitors. And it was really just in one section. But what we decided to do was to rework this chapter of the ordinance. So now we are breaking out transient merchants, itinerant merchants, and vendors. This would be the category which Chick-fil-A, for example, would fall under. We're now breaking this out from the general just kind of, conglomerate that we had, before of commercial peddling, vending transient merchants, as well as adding the food truck regulations to this. I'll go through some of these very quickly. I know there's a lot to it. If you have any questions going through after you review this, by all means, let me know. But basically, just to quickly go through, as I mentioned, we broke out transient merchants and itinerant merchants. And there are some exclusions, to that, which we have listed here. Some of those exclusions would include any person selling at a flea market that's taxed under state law, any auctioneer licensed and acting under the general provisions of General Statute Chapter 85B, any person occupying a temporary location that does not sell from stock but exhibits samples for the purpose of securing orders of further delivery. I won't go through all these. Any person selling Christmas trees or holiday decorations, or licensed automobile dealers selling new automobiles. This would be some of the exceptions to this. But essentially, in breaking this out, what this would allow us to do in the last couple of years, we've had Chick-fil-A, for example. This is the primary example that we've had. Would come in and before had filled out the peddler's permit. So what we have looked to do, though, by breaking this out, there would now be a separate application, which a business like Chick-fil-A or any other business for that matter that would classify as a transient merchant, they would come in and they would fill out this application. And essentially, what this would do would allow us to put some regulation on that. one of the big concerns was that, potentially selling the sandwiches from public streets, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on with the food trucks. But to avoid the sale on public streets or on town-owned property. Basically, what this application process would allow, it would allow them to continue to do the sales as they have been, but it would allow the town to put some regulations on that at the time that the application would be submitted and the permit would be granted. Additionally, we've added a third section to this chapter. This is the food truck chapter, the food truck portion of the chapter. And so we've got some definitions. What I want to point out to you in the information that you received in your agenda packet, if you note on the under 1.19 or sorry 0.20 definitions, we've added a definition for town sanctioned event. This will be any event sponsored by the town, supported with town resources, or in which official permission or approval has been granted by the town manager or their designee. We include this because we've had a lot of questions from other departments within the town that have events going on. I know Recreation has an event coming up for Halloween in which they're looking to bring some food trucks to the town. I know the Market on Main, I believe, is going to do some food trucks as well. So we want to be sure that any event that is sponsored by the town in which there's going to be town staff involved, what we would have them do, we would still have them submit an application for a permit for a food truck, but there will not be a charge associated. For all other food trucks, what we have proposed is that you can get a year-long application fee or a year-long permit for $100. What that would allow you to do is you would be able to operate from 5 locations within the town, and that permit will be good until December the 31st of each year. If you do have a food truck that's coming in and know there's just going to be a one-time event, we've also proposed to offer a one-time food truck permit, and that would be at $50. So again, set the fee structure there so that, because I know there was mentioned there may be some events, here in town where there may only be, a specialized food truck coming in for that individual event from, out of town, so they may not be coming back to do multiple events. So we wanted to leave some of that leeway there for that. We do have some distance requirements for the food trucks. Among them, the biggest one would be the location. They would have to be positioned 100 feet from the customer entrance of an existing restaurant. Food trucks should only be allowed to operate on private property unless they are part of one of those town-approved or town-sponsored special events, as we discussed a few minutes ago. No food truck would be able to conduct business in a public right-of-way, sidewalk, on any public road in the town, or any property owned by the town except for town-approved special events. And one of the things I believe I failed to mention regarding the permitting process, with that permit I mentioned the 5 locations, what each food truck would have to do, they would have to receive the permission of that private property owner to set up there. But once they have the permission of that private property owner, they would come back and they would include that on their application, so we would then know that they have the permission to operate from that location. So those are kind of the highlights of what we've included. I know there's kind of a lot going on in that chapter, so if you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain this.
Let's steal John Moore's phrase and say, just so to help me boil the cabbage down, you're just going to impose a little bit of regulations and permitting on these vendors that aren't otherwise regulated now. You're not going to impose any stiffer regulations or on them than we do on any other business that exists permanently. You're just not giving them any distinct advantage over.
That's correct. And honestly, most all of the other permitting approval, anything that county health department, things like that, the food trucks would have to have received that approval from the county before they would come to the town to receive a permit. So most all of that permit is already taken care of. This is just simply the permit to operate here within the town.
If a seafood food truck wants to come in, we can let them come in, but they're not going to have any advantage or disadvantage over Dixie Queen. The way it is now, they might have an advantage because they're not regulated by us, whereas the Dixie Queen, I'm just using for an example, is regulated. Is that kind of the gist of it?
Is it a permit or a fee?
It's a permit that they have to receive. So before a food truck can operate, they have to apply, go through the permitting process.
So it's regulated.
Right.
Any more questions?
Yes, sir. Okay, so let me make sure I understand this correctly. The $100 fee, if they decide to do it annually, that means that they could be here a total of 5 times. It doesn't mean that they can be here
Oh, no. They can work
just
from
5 different locations.
5 locations for the whole year.
Okay,
That's
perfect.
right.
All right, and the second thing is, like, for Hometown Halloween, we want to have food trucks downtown, and I know that would be considered a town-sanctioned event,
That's
I
correct.
guess. Okay, do we still have to have them away from the businesses, away from the, like, for example, our goal is to have one at the corner of Main and Church.
They can continue to operate within that 100 feet, but they would have to have the permission of the restaurant owner.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can do that, but they would have to have that permission from them prior to the permit being issued.
Okay. And I need to, as being in charge of the Hometown Halloween, I need to get the people that we've asked to go to the town to fill out the permit, correct?
Correct.
And that will be something that they'll need to do.
We'll work on one. We were waiting for the approval to see if there were any changes that need to be
Okay.
made. Once this is, going before the board, and the board has approved this, we'll then go in and we can quickly set up the application. So we should have the application available within the next week or so.
Okay. I might get with you about where we're talking about doing this, so you can tell me what I need to make sure it's done properly.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions? All right, this is another public hearing and the last one tonight, so I will declare it to be open at this time, and you can come and speak to this board about anything that you feel is pertinent. So anyone who wants to address this board on this. If not, I'll close the public hearing then, since there's no interest in that. And board, I'll ask you, you've already asked your questions, but do you have any action that you want to take on this item?
I will make a motion that we accept this amendment to the ordinance for food trucks and commercial peddling and vending.
You've heard the motion by Commissioner Elks. Is there any discussion on this? All those in favor of the motion, then let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The ayes have it. That is approved. Now, agenda item 4, as you recall, we took that off the agenda. So now we're down to item I, 5, 6, and 7, which are items for consent. Is there anyone who wants to take one of those items off and discuss it? If not, is there a motion that we approve these items by consent?
I move that we approve the items by consent.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Hobbs that these items be approved by consent. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Like sign. All right, that takes care of 5, 6, and 7. Now we're item 8. Item 8 is request for additional assistance in community garden. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Sandy Pruitt with the Farmville Community Garden. Our master plan with the community garden, we wish to expand our beds. The beds, it's $300 about to develop each bed. Nearly all of our beds are adopted, so shortly they will all be adopted by individuals. We would like to add those beds around the perimeter of the property and to incorporate pedestrian walking paths. We want this to be a show place. You know, our cyclists would enjoy sitting under the pecan tree, watching the birds and the butterflies and everything, and enjoying the beauty of this area in South Farmville. We have intergenerational participation, and and a diverse membership. We want to continue to grow that. We would like to develop a orchard and a vineyard in the lot behind the shed. That is town-owned property. There is a narrow strip of land that is the access point to that. There is a chain link fence that belongs to an individual in the brick house, and then the community garden, so the spaces. I think a car can drive through, but that's about it, so it's landlocked. We would like to, in extending the beds, we have some trees that need to come down to improve the lot. There's some overgrowth. We would need help removing those things. We're trying to reduce the trip hazards that we have that's created by the uneven terrain. It's suggested that crush and run gravel be brought in to provide a stable, mud-free, and low-maintenance walkway that will assist us in creating the walking paths. As we grow, it's also obvious that has become obvious to us that we need more points of water. We would like, we need 2 additional outlets on Cotton Street and 1 on Barrow Street near the beautiful oak. 120-foot hoses are heavy. I don't think we could, I know I couldn't pull a hose from one end of that lot to the other. Finally, we're nearing the end of our 5-year agreement, which we'd like the Farmville Board of Commissioners to extend our agreement to a minimum of 10 additional years. It will take about 5 to 10 years for an orchard to mature. So we would like to see our work come to fruition. Thank you for your continued support.
So basically what you're asking for then is an extension of the agreement?
We would like an extension of the agreement, additional funding to extend the beds, to expand the garden itself within the lot that we have, building additional beds. We have used heavy landscape fabric under and around the beds to minimize the weeds, and it creates less mowing too.
What kind of funds are you talking about?
We don't yet have a price on the crush and run, but we can bring that back to the board. It's $125 just to pay the dump truck and driver to deliver one load. We know that much.
But that's negotiable.
Sir?
That negotiable, like in a gift in kind, maybe?
If we could, if you know a trucker with a big truck and fuel, it'd be nice.
Okay. So you're asking for funding for the fabric, the landscaping fabric?
For the beds, the dirt, the wood.
Okay, so beds, dirt, wood, landscaping fabric,
Yes, ma'am.
crush and run, or crush and whatever you call it. What else are you asking for funding for?
The additional water outlets.
All right, water outlets. And you're also asking for some help with some trees being removed?
Some trees and overgrowth.
And what else other than
To include, to add the lot behind our shed that the town owns now, for us to be able to develop an orchard.
Okay. What else? I'm trying to so that we know exactly what you're asking.
And to extend the lease agreement, the agreement on the land for another 10 years.
Okay, let me ask another question. If the town were to give the lot and get it prepared for the fruit orchard. Are you wanting funding to purchase things to plant there too as well? Or those other beds, are you looking for funding?
We have donations there's a seed bank. We have access through the Pitt County Arboretum to plants.
Okay.
And so we ourselves are donating to the garden, plants as it is. I don't foresee us having difficulty in getting a whole fruit trees.
Okay.
When can you get a price tag?
Within 5 days.
When do you have to have a price
Well, as it is right now, we have 2 beds that have not been adopted. So there'll be people on the waiting list real soon to get beds.
I think we can, I mean, it sounds like there's an opportunity for us to donate for us to give immediately in several ways. One, pledging the land. 2, extending the commitment and clearing the land and installing a couple extra water sources. Of course, we'll ask you to be patient because our department time is valuable and maybe otherwise occupied. But I think if we were to be able to offer you those things tonight and then ask you to come back to us with some pricing on gravel and beds and things like that, I mean, would that be something you'd be interested in?
Definitely. Certainly.
For my benefit and everybody else's benefit, I know that there was some discussion earlier this summer about the garden, and some people thought that anybody could just go and pick out of the garden, and I think that's incorrect information. Is that correct? Because the people that work it, they use it for specific things, like
Right.
Food pantry and things like that. Will you explain to us how it works at the community garden?
Only people who are members of the garden should be harvesting. We each have our own bed. We also have some common beds that we work. We donate to the soup kitchen when we can get them to take the produce. We donate to other people in the community that we know are having difficulty accessing food. We're trying to encourage more people to join us to learn. It's very intimidating.
Oh, yeah, it would be for me.
You know, so come join us and work in a common bed. You will benefit from that produce. And when you're ready, then you can adopt a full bed. Of course, you can go in with somebody else, and several people work a bed, and we have some of that too. So there's different ways people can go about doing it. And like I said earlier, we have access to the seed bank, and so you don't have to buy your things. We have a lot already.
Thank you.
Just given.
Thank you.
And I think what y'all are doing is one of the 5 coolest things going on in Farmville right now. And
It's so much fun.
It's a great asset to the neighborhood. I drive down that street a lot. Just so, I mean, if I, who am not a member of the community garden, wanted to become a member, you just say, sure, come on, we'll teach you. And as long as I work, or whatever it is, participate in some way, I get to be a member. I don't have to pay a fee.
You don't pay
or a
anything.
dues or-
We have a short application. You're signing that you've read our rules. You're not going to let the weeds grow up and seed out, and you're not going to let your produce rot.
You'd be a good corporate member or whatever.
That's
A
right.
good member.
And I think you've pulled from some of the other great things that we have going on in Farmville, like the Boy Scouts.
Oh, yes.
That have chosen you to help, and that's a really good thing too, because we have great Boy Scouts here in Farmville.
Yes, we do.
We have a great troop and has a long time standing in the community, and for them to coordinate with you all, I mean, they have to see it as pretty fantastic too. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Sandy, what if my friend Bobby Joyner calls and he says, look, we got a family over here that could really use some vegetables? What happens?
We'll call one another and see what we can get together.
That's what I wanted to hear. Mayor, I asked these ladies to be here tonight for one reason, and and that was to get the orchard. I didn't know we were gonna get a laundry list. But y'all need to know that Sandy's husband is one of my best friends on this planet. And I like what you presented to us, because I'm like Jamie, I think it's one of the best things we've got going on, and I hope I live long enough to get an apple or pear off of that tree.
Counting on it.
And by the way, the fig bush over there, just so you'll know, that thing, they're talking about that all over eastern North Carolina.
It's so happy there. I mean, it's,
It's
somebody
unreal.
said, we love your bushes. I'm like, no, it's one.
It's one.
It's so much happier than it was next to the library, so, yeah, cool.
I think, Sandy, if I could interpret what I've heard up here, that this board is certainly supportive of what you all are doing and wants you to have access to more things. We're willing, I think we will be willing to see in a minute with the motion that we're willing to make some concessions, as Commissioner Dixon alluded to earlier. But the money, we can't, we're probably not going to be able to do that until we know how much we're talking about.
I understand.
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
All right? Well, then, Jamie, you seem to have the flow of...
Me and Alma got 6 things.
Yeah,
I bet.
I have 6 items. I'm the note taker.
Yeah. So I'd like to make Alma, make sure
Okay.
mine are the same as
All
yours.
right,
I'd like to make a motion to give them the more land,
right.
which goes to Barrett Street, and then I think it's between George, Barrett, and Cotton, and then there's a landlocked piece that all connects together. We'll extend that agreement for 10 years, and I'm assuming they'll take care of, if there's some issue about that they dissolve or something like that. Y'all get that worked out with whoever sits over there that does that kind of thing. And we'll commit to you to clearing the land that's overgrown now, and we'll commit to you to giving water, more water sources as our water department is able to figure out how to do that in the best way. But we'll commit to doing that. And then, and so I got those 4 things, and then ask you to come back.
You forgot the space for the orchard.
Yeah, okay, that was the landlocked
The
piece I was
landlocked,
talking about. Yeah, the space, including the space for the orchard, and ask you to come back at our next meeting and ask us specifically, give us a price we can shoot for to help you develop it.
Okay.
But that's supposed to have been, I intended for that to be a motion if I didn't say that.
Well, you did say
Okay,
that.
good.
All right. You've heard Commissioner Dixon's motion. Are there any questions, any discussion at this point?
Do have a question after the vote, Mayor.
All right. Okay, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it, and you know what to expect, Sandy.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can Martin Marietta do the rock you're talking about?
We think so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're down to agenda item 9 now, and this is closing the street for the hometown Halloween.
Do you want me to do that, Mayor Evans?
I guess I was looking at Donnie, I don't know, but you can go ahead.
Chief Green, do you want to say anything before I get started, or wait till after I? Hometown Halloween will be held, this will be our 5th or 6th consecutive year holding that in Farmville. We have grown rapidly. We started out with 1 city block of with trunk or treat cars, with the fire department, the police department, and things like that. And we now have grown to where we would like to close Belcher Street to the library on Church Street and Main Street to have Hometown Halloween. We will have trunk or treat cars again. We will have some food trucks. We will have games. The games, the trunk or treat type things will be totally free. Any food that you purchase from the food trucks or whatever, that will be totally up to you as to what you purchase and you have to pay for. But we are trying to make sure that it is a fun, safe event for our children as well as our adults. We probably have 700 plus people out and about on the streets that night. And we gave out a ton of candy last year. And so I'm asking that we do this so that the streets can be closed from 5 p.m. until 10 p.m. In order for us to quickly get set up after 5 p.m. because the event will be from 6 to 8.
Okay, is that it, Brenda?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that's both blocks of Main Street?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Boy, do you have any questions on this? If not, let's have a motion then that we approve this.
I just don't know if I can get behind this.
Okay.
I made a motion, we approve the street closures for the hometown Halloween.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Dixon that we comply with this request. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Would be no. All right, so that is approved. All right, next is agenda item 10. 3 properties that, from the tax attorney for demolition.
All right, so this item here, what we've got before you is you all are aware, a couple of years ago, the town made the decision to hire a tax attorney to go after several properties that through the code enforcement process, Paul's been working diligently to go after a number of homes here in the community. Some of these homes still had a tax value attached to it, so the town had hired a tax attorney to go through the process of trying to acquire these homes for the town. Maybe not necessarily through the fault of the tax attorney alone. There has just been a slowdown now in some of the properties and trying to acquire those. I know one of the issues, for example, a few weeks ago in talking with the attorney, you have some of these properties that have a number of heirs that all have to be contacted before the town can come back into ownership of these properties, and so that's taken quite a bit of time. Just for example, the other week there was one that one of the heirs is in the Washington, D.C. area, so you're having to have a sheriff's officer there try to serve notice to someone in Washington, D.C. So this has obviously taken up quite a bit of time and has really slowed the process on a lot of these homes that the code enforcement department is trying to move forward on. In order for the department, we can request that we take back some of these homes that we may have submitted to the tax attorney. However, there is a $600 fee that must be paid for each of these properties to be brought back. We were sitting down the other week, we had a discussion. There are 3 properties that we brought before you this evening in which if we were to get those properties back from the tax attorney, Paul could pretty much immediately start taking action on the condemnation process for these homes and go ahead and get those down. Those properties are at 4315 West Pine Street, 3894 Brooks Drive, and 3714 Cameron Street. So basically, we come before the board this evening to see if we could begin to take the steps to take these properties back from the tax attorney, so that our code enforcement department could begin to take steps toward the condemnation process and getting these homes down.
Okay, you have any questions for Justin? I do. I see one house here on West Pine Street. I think there are 4 there that is in disrepair. Where do the other 3 stand?
Right. And if Paul doesn't mind speaking a little bit on that.
There's one Pine Street that the town of Farmville already owns. One house torn down by the owner, and then the next house, the town of Farmville, they limited that to the town of Farmville. You got already given permission. We were just waiting now on, we got he don't want to come in for full house. And then the one he's talking about is white two-story house.
Oh, is that right?
So they were turned over, right after the tax attorney started doing business with the town of Farmville. And at that time, finance wasn't aware that had those on my list. So they had turned some of those houses over. Then when I got to them, I found out they'd already been turned over to the tax attorney. And we've got one back already. They're on Main Street. If you remember the last house we took down there on Main Street, that was one that had been turned in. And once we got back, we went ahead and moved it.
Paul,
It takes the tax attorney a long time.
Yeah.
then we'll be in a position to sell the lots.
That's correct.
Okay.
But they're really a mess now, house and the yard.
And just a clarification on the $600, once the tax attorney goes to a certain point in the foreclosure process, he has to shell out fees and of course the staff time to get it to that point, and that was a predetermined figure in the contract if we were to take it back after his staff had done a certain amount of work. So that's where that comes from. That's not just a penalty, that's actually he's trying to recoup costs, that his staff has in the action so far.
All right. Is there a motion?
Yes,
What?
I'll make,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
yes, I'll make a motion that, we move to retake, control of the 3 delinquent properties, from the tax attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, do you have anything?
I'd just like for Paul, Justin, Paul and I've dealt with this many times. Paul, would it be fair for this board to say that we have an aggressive policy of taking down houses and selling off the property? Are we being very aggressive in that?
We do, and I had a couple of weeks ago, first of the email and whatnot, I know you guys see, I did a little research. I went back and I found a list that individual and I had accumulated several years ago, 52 properties. I came behind them and had an additional list which included some of those properties, 7 properties. Then, since then, more properties have been added to it. So I have a total of 130 properties. Of the 130, 62 of those properties have been bought out. What I think is even more remarkable, 47 have been renovated. One of them, it pops out in my mind, is the Plank House restaurant. That was a condemned building. And a citizen took the initiative to spend a lot of money to bring that back. So there's been a lot of them. So of that 130, 109 of them have either been renovated or torn down. And we have 9 have been turned over, 9 of those have been turned over to the tax attorney. And we have 6 more that are in the process, different processes right now. So I think that's fairly aggressive.
So if an individual would say this board's not doing anything, they would be badly mistaken. Is that fair?
I wish you would point that out often.
I think I just did. Thank you. I'm ready to vote.
All right. So we have a motion. Anyone else? Any discussion? All right. Okay, James.
Just a comment that in case it's not clear, that I think this board would urge you to continue to do what you're doing, and we appreciate it. We know the town of Farmville does, and you have our full, speaking for myself, but it sounds like you have everyone's up here full support and appreciation. So thank y'all.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Ayes have it. So, Paul, you and Justin can go to work. All right. Last item, item 11, is appointment to the Mideast Rural Transportation Planning Organization. Anybody has, okay, there
Just real quickly, we've just we received a request from the Mideast RPO. They have updated their bylaws and have just requested that the town actually take official action to appoint representatives from the town. Currently and in the past, Mr. Hodgkins has attended for the town. Since I come on board earlier this year, I've begun to attend those meetings on what the RPO calls the TCC, which is essentially comprised of your planners, town managers, staff level. The RPO also has a TAC board, which is essentially consists of your elected officials. Each county within the RPO has a county commissioner elected official and as well as a municipal elected official. Pitt County at the time currently has a vacant position on the TAC for the municipal representative. Spoke with Commissioner Hobbs, and she has volunteered to serve on the Mideast RPO TAC. So at this point, we're just requesting that the board take formal action to appoint myself and Mr. Hodgkins to the TCC and Commissioner Hobbs to the TAC.
All right. Thank you. Is there any questions before we have a motion? Is there a motion that we appoint Stokes and town manager to the TTC? Is that right?
TCC.
TCC, and then Commissioner Hobbs to the TAC.
So moved.
So moved. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. That completes our agenda except for citizen comments that you're allowed to speak this time without signing up. I'd just like to say it's has been our practice to recognize the scouting movement here in Farmville, and we have done that on numerous occasions, and I know that we have some here tonight that I'd like to maybe recognize you and just tell us who you are. And I know you're here because of how you helped out with the community garden, I believe. So how about, you mind telling us, and we'll start with you, maybe it'll give him a little more time.
My name is Robert Allen. I'm a Scoutmaster 25. I'm also one of the founding members of the community garden. We're here to support them because they help the community. 2 of our Eagle Scouts have done Eagle projects already in the garden, and we're looking at more because right now we have 15 boys going for Eagle.
Is that unusual?
It's very high. We're kind of top of it this year, but that's where they need a project. They need ladies, kids, projects that can help them get to Eagle, as well as helping the community.
Good, thank you.
Michael Fields, he's here to support us, as well as he's sitting in for his citizenship and community merit badge.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
So he's kind of doing double duty.
Thank you all, both of you. All right, we're down to citizen comments now. Is there anything you want to comment on that you've seen go on here tonight? Anybody? All right, board, I'll look down to Alma first if y'all have any comments you want to make.
I have a couple of comments. Number one, I want to thank David Hodgkins for allowing me to attend the meeting today. And I want to let everyone know about this meeting. This is a meeting of the Pitt County Economic Development. Everyone was doing things separately, but now they have decided to coordinate all the efforts in economic development for Pitt County. And that's a good thing because you're not duplicating efforts. And I think it's going to be a good thing for Farmville. But I do want to encourage this board that if we're going to be at the table, we need to be able to have a voice and a vote. And in order to have a voice and a vote, we have to pay the dues. So I hope that everyone would support our active participation on this council. And I think it's going to be great. They have a theme that says, together, we are making Pitt County better. So we were going to make Farmville better and then the county better. And I think that enhances everything that we do. And secondly, I want to comment on that garden. 2 years ago, I was disappointed with that land. It was an eyesore. And I think I mentioned it to some of you, but I want you to know it is beautiful. I am so proud now to tell everybody to go see the community garden. And you have truly enhanced our community. Thank you.
Yes, the garden is incredible. It is. But since you brought it up, and just, David, would you mind just making an agenda item next month about the contribution to the economic development?
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
I've answered all my questions and made all my comments.
How about you, Commissioner?
I'm on grandstand if you don't mind. I'm going to ask Brenda to pull up an email that I received, and it was quite an accolade to me, and I'm going to use this to make a bridge here for something that I want to make that was left out earlier tonight. And then I have a press release that I'm extremely proud of, and really what I'm doing is buying time and hoping that the person will be here. So if you'll just give me for just a second. I'm not going to call the individual's name even though she is in here tonight. You never know who's watching you. And I received this email sometime back. It says, John, I really don't think you realize how many people in my community think very highly of you and plan to support you in the upcoming election. I do too, until you interrupt my TV program telling me to buy a car. Laugh out loud. And the person that wrote that, I've had that email, and I plan on posting it because when I got it, I was real proud. But Saturday night, I was beyond proud because my friend Bobby Joyner asked me to be the MC of the HB Suggs event. And while I was there, I was in the company of over 160 people, standing room only, and out of that, 96 people were from the class of 1969. And out of that class of 1969, most of them I knew on a first name basis. So when I stood there and emceed that event, you know, being from one side of the track, Bobby, to the other side of the track, I was beyond thrilled to be there, and it was quite an overwhelming experience to be asked to be there. And I want to thank all my friends that were there that night who allowed me to be there. But there was one thing that was left out in your presentation tonight. Alma Hobbs, Commissioner Hobbs, presented Bobby with a plaque. And it was about his commitment, his dedication, his service, and his vision, not only to the HB Suggs organization, but to the town of Farmville. And Bobby has moved back to Farmville with a commitment. And Bobby and I together have made a bond that we're going to help Bobby do exactly what Bobby wants to do, and that is make Farmville a better place. And even though we don't have a plaque tonight, Dr. Hobbs, I'd like for Bobby to stand and give him a big round of applause, folks, because he did an incredible job. Bobby? The next thing I want to share with you is I'm a little disappointed that the fella cannot be here tonight. Somebody recently made a statement that commissioners work one day a month. And I want to tell you, I know of some that got upset, but I absolutely loved it because I'm taking the opportunity tonight for the person that did that to eat their words. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege tonight to read you the press release that was given to me today because the person who is going to do this is not here tonight. I will not read it all because I'm going to leave the thunder for the newspaper because of what so many things you do and help you with your new venture of joining the whole county together for your newspaper. So I'll just read part of this. The board started on this back in February. Thus, there goes the flat lie of the one day a month. So, with that being said, here comes the positive. Benji Holloman announced today that Furniture Warehouse of Farmville will be opening in the shopping center at Cooperative Way, Farmville. In a few short weeks, Farmville will have an option of affordable new home furnishings, including Ashley Furniture, the world's largest furniture manufacturer. Holloman stated, I believe the timing is right for the affordable options for furniture in Farmville, since the Farmville Board of Commissioners paved the way for construction for 60 new homes in Farmville. Opening this store just seemed to fit. He goes on to say in his closing comment, and there are some other comments from members of this board, but it says it says Furniture Warehouse of Farmville hopes to be accepting application within 30 days, anticipating hiring 5 to 7 people. He says, I'm excited about bringing Furniture Warehouse location to Farmville. The enthusiasm and the assistance that I've received from the Town Board of Commissioners mean a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to give applause to my colleagues on this board who made this happen. And Mayor, with that done, I'm done.
All right. I think
And the person that wrote those kind words is in this audience tonight, if y'all would like to talk to her.
All right. Since we've completed our citizen comments, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion that we adjourn.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Please stand.